Okay, we're almost done with decimals. This section is going to be the longest section that we'll probably see in this entire course. And that's because dividing decimals, there's going to be lots of different categories and difficulty levels. So this video is going to be divided into 3 sections. So this first section, we're going to talk about dividing decimals. We're going to talk about dividing by whole numbers that result in terminating decimals, and we'll define that in a minute. So our procedure. For division, we want to use the division house. We want to put the first or top number inside, and the second or bottom number goes outside. Remember that it's not going to be like subtraction where the larger number always goes on top. The first number always goes inside, or the top number always goes inside, whether it's larger or not. From there, we want to use long division. We're going to line up the digit of our answer with the last digit that we are working with, just like we did when we talked about division with whole numbers. We're going to continue dividing until we can't divide anymore. With decimals, there are no remainders. So we will need to add zeros to our inside number as needed. Once we are done with our division, then we're going to move the decimal point straight up into our answer, and we are going to determine the sign of our answer as our last step. Remember, if you have an even number of negatives, or these ones we're always going to have 2 numbers, so if they have same signs, the result will be positive. And if we have just 1 negative floating around, then our answer will be negative. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some examples. So the first set of examples, these are going to be terminating decimals. Now, part 1. Now, terminating decimals, what that means is it ends at some point. In the next presentation, we will talk about non-terminating decimals or repeating decimals, which are decimals that go on forever. But for now, let's stick with the easy ones. Let's just talk about terminating decimals. Now, these first 4 examples are going to be our easiest examples because we are going to see that we do not have to add zeros on them. But let's go ahead and see what we're going to be looking for as we do these problems. If we start with example A, we have 93.6 divided by 4. 93.6 is my first number, therefore it is going to go inside, and my 4 will go outside. So just like we did before, we're going to figure out, okay, what's the first number I can divide by 4? It is 9. 4 goes into 9 2 times. We multiply 2 times 4, which gives us 8. Subtract, we get 1. Bring down our 3. And remember that once we start, we have to continue to divide once we bring down a digit. 4 goes into 13 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12. Subtract, we get 1. All right. We bring down our 6. 4 goes into 16 4 times. 4 times 4 is 16. Subtract, we get 0. And this is what we're looking for right here. I have a 0, I have nothing else, and so we are done with our division. All right, from there, I want to move my decimal point straight up into my answer, and so we should get 23.4. And we're done with this problem. All right, let's come over to B. B, we have 6.804 divided by 6. My top number, again, is going to go inside. My bottom number goes outside. So we go ahead and start our division. What's the first number I can divide by 6? It is 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 1 times 6 is 6. Subtract, we get 0. We bring down the 8. 6 goes into 8 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. Subtract, we get 2. Bring down the 0. 6 goes into 20 3 times. 3 times 6 is 18. Subtract, we get 2. Bring down the 4. 6 goes into 24 4 times. 4 times 6 is 24. And 24 minus 24 is 0. I have no other digits to work with, and so we are done. So my last step is to move my decimal point straight up into my answer, and so we get 1.134. And we're done with this one. Okay, let's come over to example C. So one of the first things to notice about this problem is that we do have a negative in it. So we're going to ignore that for now. We'll bring it in the end. So we have negative 278.3 divided by 11. I'm going to start by dividing, disregarding signs. Inside, I have 278.3. I'm going to divide by 11. So what's the first number that I can divide 11 into? That'll be the 27. 11 goes into 27 2 times. 2 times 11 is 22. Subtract, we get 5. All right, we bring down our 8. 11 goes into 58 5 times. 5 times 11 is 55. Subtract, we get 3. Bring down our 3. 11 goes into 33 3 times. 3 times 11 is 33. And if we subtract, we get 0. And so we're done with our division. We move our decimal point straight up into our answer. So we get 25.3. And the last thing we need to remember is that we did have a negative in our problem. And so my final answer is going to be 25.3. And we keep our negative. And that's example C. All right, last one. We have D. We have negative 213.45 divided by negative 15. So my top number is going to go inside. My bottom number, the 15, will go outside, and we divide. So what's the first number that 15 divides into? That's going to be the 21. So 21 divided by 15 is 1. 1 times 15 is 15. Subtract, we get 6. We bring down our 3. 15 goes into 63. Let's try 4. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 2 is 6. Okay, that worked. We have that 60 is smaller than 63, so that's okay. And when we subtract, we get 3, which is smaller than 15, so that's good. So 4 was the correct number. All right. Let's go ahead and continue with our division. So our next step is we bring down the 4. How many times does 15 go into 34? We should get 2. 2 times 15 is 30. Subtract, we get 4. We bring down the 5. How many times does 15 go into 45? That should be 3. 3 times 15 is 45. Subtract, we get 0, and we're done with our division. All right, so our next step is we want to move our decimal point straight up into our answer. And then finally, we want to determine the sign of our answer. So we have a negative divided by a negative becomes a positive. Our two negatives cancel, and so my final answer is 14.23. All right, so this is the this is the first set of terminating decimals, and this one, notice that we do not have to add zeros. Basically, whatever digits we are given, that's all we need in order to divide. Now, let's go ahead and look at the next set, which are also terminating decimals, but these are going to be ones that we are going to have to add zeros. All right, so let's start with A. Let's look at 6.4 divided by 5. Okay, so again, my first number is going to go inside my division house. My 5 will go outside, and we divide. So what is the first number that I can divide by 5? It should be 6. 6 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times 5 is 5. We subtract, we get 1. And we bring down our 4. All right. How many times does 5 go into 14? That should be a total of 2. 2 times 5 is 10. Subtract, we get 4. Now, when we talked about whole numbers, we would stop at this stage and put it as a remainder. But with decimals, there are no remainders when we talk about dividing decimals. So what do? Well, what we can do is we can add zeros as needed. So let's go ahead and add a 0. We'll bring it down. We get 40. 5 goes into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. Subtract, we get 0. And now we're done. Now that we have a remainder of 0, we're good to go. So the last step is I want to move my decimal point up into my answer, and we get 1.28. Okay, let's try a couple more. Let's try 30.87 divided by 14. So my inside number is going to be the 30.87. My outside number will be the 14. All right, 14 goes into 30 2 times. 2 times 14 is 28. Subtract, we get 2. I bring down my 8. 14 goes into 28 2 times. 2 times 14 is 28. Subtract, we get 0. Am I done? The answer is no, because I still have that 7 there that I have to work with. So I'm going to bring down the 7. And remember that when we bring down a digit, we have to divide at this point. How many times does 14 go into 7? Well, it doesn't, so I'm going to add a 0 above the 7. If you want, you can multiply, but we don't have to. But I'm still not good, so I still don't have a remainder of 0. So I'm going to add a 0. Bring it down, and how many times does 14 go into 70? 14 goes into 70 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. And so we get 70 minus 70 is 0. Finally, I want to move my decimal. We do have the 0 that we wanted, and so we don't have to worry about continuing to divide. Last, we want to move our decimal point straight up into our answer, and so our final answer is 2.205. All right, last example. We have 1.5 divided by -8. So what digit goes inside the division house? Our inside number is the first one. So inside I have 1.5. Outside, remember, we're going to divide disregarding signs, so I'm going to put an 8 on the outside. All right, so what is the first number that I can divide by 8? It is 15. And so 8 goes into 15 one time. 1 times 8 is 8. Subtract, we get 7. All right, we add a 0. Bring it down. 8 goes into 70. 8 times 8 is 64. Subtract, we get 6. We add a 0. We bring it down. How many times does 8 go into 60? That's going to be 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. Subtract, we get 4. We're still not quite there, almost there. We add a 0. We bring it down. How many times does 8 go into 40? That's going to be 5. 5 times 8 is 40. Subtract, we get 0, and we are finally done. So we bring our decimal point straight up into our answer. We get 0.1875, but we're not done yet because we still have to remember the signs. And so our final answer, we have one negative, we keep it. And so we get negative 0.1875. All right, so that is our Terminating Decimals Part 2. Go ahead, take a quick break, and then come back for non-terminating decimals in the next presentation.